What's going on, people? I got a scratchy throat, so you might hear a lot of coughing. If it gets too ridiculous, I'll just edit it out. Even though that's going against literally what I talked about in the last video. Anyways, what was the last video? What are we doing? What's going on? So, in the last video, I basically did a test video, which ended up being episode 1, where I kind of gave the thesis of all of this, of everything that's going on, right? And yeah, I kind of decided that I'm gonna just keep trying to commentate while playing. So I'm playing this while I'm commentating, and let's just seeing how things go, right? Basically, to reiterate, to abbreviate, to summarize, there we go. I just woke up like an hour ago, by the way. So to summarize what was going on last episode, I basically talked about how I wanted to talk about issues and give my opinions on things, and do so in a casual way that is basically unedited. And the point of that is to show that you can have conversations about sensitive topics without, without posturing, without being defensive, without hesitating, without being nervous, without, being scared that, somebody might disagree or, any of that stuff. Like, you can talk about sensitive things, right? You can talk about Ukraine. You can talk about religion. You can talk about Islam. You can talk about, Syria. You can talk about politics. You can talk about all these things and not be, scared. Like, you don't have to have fear, and there's no fear involved in discussing these things. And so, yeah, that's the whole point of this series, is that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to talk about random things and, yeah, give my opinions and why I think the things I do. And, in the comments, you can feel free to, if you have questions, concerns, disagreements, let me know. I might address them if they're credible. And, yeah. And the whole purpose of the point, the format rather, or the why I'm doing it the way I am doing it, is because the point is that this is background noise, basically. This is something you listen to. Because I've kind of come to the conclusion that a lot of people are just looking for background noise, something to play while they're doing other things, something to play on their second monitor or whatever. And that's what this is. Which is why the video that you're watching has nothing to do with anything I'm talking about. The video is just there primarily as, filler, so I can have something other than a black screen. It helps with the SEO, right? Because, gaming is such a big, part of YouTube, right? So if my video is of a game, I can, you know how it works. I don't need to explain. So, having said all that, I figure the first kind of question people might have is, well, who are you? Like, why would anybody give any kind of a flying fiddlestick what you think? You're just some dude, like, what is this? And yeah, you're right, I am just some dude. But, I forgot. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. Yeah, so, who am I? Okay, this is not... Alright, I should have remembered I needed to do this. I know what it is, it's railroad. Let's see, R. Yep. A. I. L. R. Okay, this I actually should have... I should probably cut this out. O-A... Where's the A? A... Railroad. Anyways, who am I? Why would you care to listen to me? Well, so I figured today I would just talk about who I am. Give like a little mini biography about who I am, what my background is, why you would care to listen to anything I have to say. So, my name is Jeffrey. Was born in 1986. Shoot, where do you even start? Okay, fuck it. We'll just start from school, right? So, my childhood was kind of rough. First, single parent household. There's, all that, but also, I guess school, right? Like, so let's go over the interesting thing that was, my schooling. I started a year early, so yeah, yay, I had a head start. But then in second grade, I failed. I failed second grade, because of my behavior, right? But also, this was in the 90s during the era of everybody has ADHD, so we need to give everybody Ritalin. Lots of opinions on that, by the way. And yeah, like I was a mess in school. I remember the early years were pretty, like I remember I used to pee on myself. I don't know why I'm saying that, but it's a thing. Like, that was an issue I had, right? Like, I couldn't hold it. So there was lots of kind of, there were I can explain it this way. There were things that made me the target of bullying, and also, of course, in turn, I would bully, right? So I had like that kind of childhood, right? In fifth grade, I went to a special education class for ADHD. So I was in the class with like the people who had, I don't think it was called autism then, but basically autism, Down syndrome, all the whole nine, right? And I remember I resented that because it's like, why am I here? So I didn't take any of that seriously. And, I was a problem child, troublemaker. And I skipped sixth grade because I was too old. And I went to seventh grade. And at some point, so I got in trouble with the police a lot. I was arrested 7 times before the age of 18. And then I was never arrested after the age of 18. Whatever. At some point, I got arrested and I did 8.5 months in STC, Shelby Training Center, it was called. I think it still exists. It's in Memphis, which is where I live. And that the whole time at STC, that's a whole video in itself. So we're just gonna gloss over that. I was 13, did 8.5 months in STC, and it was jail. Like it was, 23 and a half, as they say. And then after that, I moved to Memphis. So I grew up before that, I was in Millington, went to like EA Herald and a couple of those other schools. And then I moved to Memphis, and I went to Kingsbury and Treadwell and a couple other schools. I was in alternative school for a couple years. I failed 9th grade 3 times, I want to say. Yeah, 3 times. The third time I failed, I had turned 18. I convinced the teacher, or what do you call it? The counselor. I convinced the counselor to put me into 10th grade. And she was like, are you going to actually finish, blah, blah, blah. Are you going to actually do what you say you're going to do? And I was like, oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, yep, that's me. I'm 100%. I'm not letting this get me down. And ended up dropping. They put me in 10th grade. And then I ended up dropping out about 2 weeks later because I was in school. And at this point, I had already been Muslim for a while. Let's see. I became Muslim in like 2004. Um, yeah, I became Muslim in 2004, and I was in class, and I remember distinctively there was this girl who was like, well, she made a comment because somebody asked me like, are you Muslim? Like, what's going on? And I said, yeah. And then this girl made a comment, and she was like, but you're not black. You can't be Muslim if you're not black. And I was like, uh, I don't even think I said anything. I just asked the teacher if I could, you know, go to the bathroom, and then I got my books. I went to the front office actually, and I took myself out of school. I was just like, what's the paperwork I need to do to get myself out of school? I'm 18. I don't want to be here. This is dumb. And so I dropped out. And that was my grade school experience. And then I basically did nothing for a couple years. And then I had like a job at like a gas station for like 2 weeks, and then another one at another gas station for like a month. And then eventually I got a job with my sheikh, who owned a bakery called Amana Bakery. And I worked there for about 3 years making pita bread. I have not been paying attention to this game at all. I worked there making pita bread for 3 years. One of the best times of my life. That the bakery is also its own video. For some other time, I worked at the bakery, and I wasn't, it was minimum wage or whatever, and I just kind of came to the conclusion like, yeah, I'm like approaching 25, 26, and I'm not, this is not, I got to figure something out with my life. Like, I can't just, I'm still living with my mom at that point, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, let's try university. Because at first, so the thing about university is I had never intended to go, because prior to going to university, I was kind of big into sociology. And I was on this kick, which turned out to be real, that they just don't like white people in university. Like, why would I go to university? They don't like white males. Why would I ever go? Like, that's not the place for me. And this was in, I was 25, maybe 2014, I guess. Something like that. 2014, maybe 2013, or no, 2012. Because the first place I applied was ITT Tech for mechanical engineering, and it was a shitload of math, and I was like, you know what? That ain't going to work. Then I tried community college, and I guess they signed me up, but I never showed up because I was waiting for, like, paperwork and stuff. Because I didn't, I figured they would, like, send a letter or something saying, hey, you've been accepted, blah, blah, blah. They never sent any of that. And then they charged me. And this is going to come up later because eventually I went to University of Memphis. And when I went to University of Memphis, they were like, well, you need to give us your record from your other school. And the other school that I never went to was like, well, you owe us $800 for this course you took, blah, 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 whatever, right? So I get the $800, I pay it, and then I eventually get into University of Memphis. Oh, and I skipped over, but at some point between this, I got my GED, which was really easy. I just went in, took a test, I wrote an essay, and boom, bam, done, right? I think I probably Googled, how to Google or how to write an essay at some point. And then, I just wrote an essay, pencil, paper, blah, blah, blah. Got my GED. And eventually made it to University of Memphis. I was there I did 7.5 years. The first 2 years was geology. So I wanted to be a petroleum geologist because you make a lot of money being a petroleum geologist. Geology is a science not many people get involved in. So, it's pretty good. But turns out, funny story, that geology requires math. This thing called math. In fact, in my undergraduate, I eventually switched out of geology. And the reason I did was because in undergraduate, I did good in most of my classes, but then sedimentology came along. And in this class, you have to do calculus. Or a trig. I think you had to do trigonometry. But there were other classes coming where you had to do calculus. Funny story that I failed in university remedial math twice. So it's like, my math skills are very, very subpar. Like, extremely subpar. So that basically killed that, right? There was no way I was going to learn all the math that I needed to learn in time to make it through the rest of geology. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. So after 2 years, I switched to sociology because I was already interested in all of that. And, you know, I was already interested in all of that. And so I was like, oh, it's going to be easy. And it was. But this is also, this kind of confirmed, because it confirmed a lot of my suspicions about, like, university. Because basically every course I took, and this is nothing against professors or anybody, you know, if somebody's one day listening to this who was a teacher of mine, but basically everything, all of the classes were basically, here's how white people are bad. You know, sociology of insert thing, of education, of this, of that, of whatever. All of it's basically like a big, you know, analysis of why white people are just terrible people. And so it was very easy for me to, you know, get through that course, right? Because I knew the line to toe, right? To get through that degree. And so I eventually did. But then I came to the conclusion, you know, a sociology degree is not really, ooh, that's not getting me paid. That's not, you know. So I decided, you know what? I have a friend. He lives in Jeddah. But he is American. He is from my area. He's a friend of mine. And he had his degree in sociology. And then he got a master's in English. And he taught ESL. And he still does. He's been doing it for like 9-10 years, something like that. And so I was like, well, there we go. I found a thing I can do. And it enables me to travel. So I got a master's degree in English with a focus on ESL. Most of the classes were either ESL related or linguistics related. So I took a lot of, like, you know, I took courses on, like, how to, I can't remember the name of the course, but it was like, do I have any water? I took courses on, like, analysis, like how to tell if an assignment or a test is valid, how to, you know, do this kind of thing. But I also took courses on, like, grammar and cultural and social issues that come up in ESL and so on and so forth. It was interesting stuff. Got my master's, graduated in 2019, and then I went to Saudi Arabia. The plan was to go for 2 years, ended up going for 6 months, because in March 2020 I had to return to the U.S. because of COVID. And I've been here ever since. Still living with my mom. Ain't that great? I probably skipped some stuff, but that's basically like my childhood / education / where I came from. I don't know how long I've been recording. We're going to see if I can look at OBS and tell. Does it say 18 minutes I've been recording? We can go a little longer. So that's my background, right? That's my life to this point. But in the middle of all that, in 2004, I'll just give you my story, how I became Muslim. In 2004, I basically became Muslim. I was in high school, 9th grade, and there was a girl I liked. Yeah, it's about to get real cliche. There was a girl I liked. Her name was Hawa, and she was from Somalia. And she was like, I mean, you know, she was up there, and, you know, she was easily like 8 or 9 out of 10. She was pretty, I'll just say that, right? But she didn't cover, like, she didn't have hijab or anything. And I remember she used to always sit next to me because she would cheat off of me. And that's not like a belittlement of her. Like, I would show her my paper. You know what I mean? It was like, One of those things. But one day I was talking to her and I found out where she lived. Or not where she lived, where she worked. And she worked at the store. I forgot the name. I don't know it. I wouldn't tell you anyways because, you know, you don't need to know that. Actually, I need to be careful I don't give out too much information. But anyways, you know, so I'm not doxing myself. But anyways, I found out where she worked, and I went there, and she had a niqab on, a hijab, and a abaya, the whole nine. And I was like, I was 17 at the time, and I was like, I don't, what? Like, huh? What is this? I don't, okay. I couldn't even talk to her. I literally spoke to her. I guess it was her dad, and I was like, "Are y'all hiring?" He was like, "Nope," and I was like, "All right, peace." I didn't even talk to her. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. Go home. I don't know what it was. I searched, but it was on Yahoo. I searched something, and it led me eventually to like Yahoo Chat because there was Islam related rooms on Yahoo Chat. And then through there, I found a local musalla. And I went to that musalla for a little while. But they didn't really teach the religion. Like it was one of those places where you go, you pray. They might have like an event where a guy gives a lecture. Because I remember there was a guy who gave a lecture on like the history of the Ottomans or something. But like they didn't teach the basic obligatory knowledge. And the books that they have were very mixed. Like, I mean, they had misguided stuff, right? Like, it was just, the knowledge wasn't really taken seriously, and it was mixed up. You guys are bad guys, right? Yes, you are. You took care of them guys. And I remember I went to the imam and I asked him, like, I want to learn about Islam. What can you do? And he handed me a translated copy of Ibn Majah, which is a hadith collection book. And he was like, there you go learn about Islam. And so I remember 17-year-old me walking around high school with a copy of Ibn Majah and a kufi. And I was reading Ibn Majah in school when I should have been doing, work. In case it's not really clear, which it might not be, Ibn Majah is like, that's not a book, like that's, Ibn Majah is a hadith book, and hadith books are references for scholars. They're not something you just pick up and you start reading. I mean, some of them even have like collections of hadith in them that aren't even correct, right? Because they're there for reference purposes. They're not there to be used as like a basis for anything, right? So you don't hand somebody a hadith book and go, learn about Islam. And then eventually I was, one day I was at the musalla and I came out and there was this guy and he kind of told me like he basically put the idea of the what's the word, the first drops of true traditional knowledge. He looked at me and he was like, he was talking to everybody who was coming out of because it was like right after Juma. He was like he was preaching out loud, and he was telling people, you don't create your own actions. Only Allah is the creator, and you are a creation. And I mean, it's like, people would agree with that. In general, like Muslims, even people who call themselves Muslims would agree with that, even if they're ignorant, right? Like, that's not a revelation. But it's, so he was like, I remember I don't know what I said to him, but he basically started talking to me, and he was like, you can, lift one leg. So I lifted one leg, and he was like, now lift your other leg without putting your first leg down. And obviously you can't, because you can't fly, right? You can't float. And he basically was like, you can't create your own actions. Like, you cannot do anything you want. You have limits. Which, yeah, I mean, it was right. Um, and I remember I asked him, what? No, I'm not talking to you. I remember I asked him like, the way, and like he talked about like, this is stuff I'll get into later, but he talked about like 13 attributes and all of this other kind of like in-depth but also basic Islamic knowledge about Aqidah. And I remember asking him like, where did you learn this? And then he told me, and then I found probably my main teacher at the time for a while, a brother named Ali, and I went to his classes, and he broke it down. He was, he went over the creed of the Muslims and what the obligatory knowledge is. Which, by the way, my next video is going to be the basics of Islam. But I wanted to give this little background information on myself first. But he went over the basics, and he went over it in a clear, concise, methodical way. And it all made sense. And then eventually, when I started working in a Manna bakery, which was owned by the man who I call my sheikh now, who is my primary guy I go to whenever I have questions, Sheikh Amr. I met him. I worked with him for 3 years. One of the best experiences of my life. That's talking about him is also a video in itself. Like it's a whole video. So, yeah. And at that point, when I started, so before I was with before I was with Brother Ali, it's hard to say what my beliefs were. After I was with Ali, everything was, set in stone. Like I knew, okay, this is what is obligatory to know. This is what it is. These are the beliefs and the positions you have to have in order to be considered a Muslim. This is what you have to believe about Allah. This is what you have to believe about Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, etc. I knew all that, and so that's the point where I'm like, okay, this is when I'm actually Muslim now. Like this is actually when it started, right? But my journey to learn the Islamic knowledge has continued, obviously, and we can get into that at some other point. Anyways, I'm going to end the video right here. So, yeah, that was a long rant, but it's what this channel's for. Anyways, Preston, peace out, everybody, and let's end recording.